Hey there, sports psych enthusiasts. I'm Dr. Colin Fehr, and I want to share my passion with you. I love talking about ways to unleash the power of the mind. This recording is part of a larger lecture series I've created in an effort to make sports psychology concepts more accessible to a larger audience. The information contained in this series is especially well suited for students of sports psychology and is presented in a way that makes for easy listening for all. Welcome to Sports Psych Concepts.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this recording for the Sports Psych Concepts lecture series. I am Dr. Colin Fehr. Want to talk to you today about mindfulness and how being mindful can improve performance. So, of course, we've got to go over what mindfulness is, define that, look at some of the benefits of mindfulness, and there are several actual formal interventions out there that can be used to enhance performance. So we'll touch on some of those just briefly, and then end with a few pro tips, because you know I like to share those in these presentations. So let's jump into this. So what is mindfulness? That's the first question we've got to ask ourselves. And simply put, it's paying attention on purpose without judgment. Okay, so that non-judgmental thing is a key part of this. And I've alluded to mindfulness in other presentations, and it's really kind of warrants its own presentation, which is why it's a standalone here. But we don't have judgment on our thoughts, our feelings, or any of the sensations. Okay, we're not interpreting any of those as good or bad. So this is different than some of the other things that I've mentioned in terms of how do we deal with stress management, anxiety, that sort of things. Like, well, we need to interpret those things as facilitative, as positive, as something that we can use. The mindfulness perspective is different. We're just observing those things non-judgmentally. They just are what they are in the moment, and we're just making observations and we're just experiencing them. Okay, so it's the opposite of mindlessness. Okay, so mindlessness is we're just going through the motions. We're not really paying attention to what it is we're experiencing. We're not totally present. Okay, mindfulness is we are there. We're in the moment. And yes, it's rooted in Buddhism, and so it has a different philosophical lens than Western cultures, and that's part of what makes it really fascinating and useful. Okay, so rather than trying to control or change the thoughts, which is a traditional part of mental skills training, right? With thought stoppage or restructuring, reframing, reducing techniques, different things that we do. Mindfulness, we're just observing them as if they're disconnected from us. Okay, so that's how it can be non-judgmental, because it's like, well, okay, here's all these different things, and it's just like we're separating ourselves from them. We're just standing back and observing them. And so there's a few axioms of mindfulness that Shapiro put out there. So the first one is attention, right? So we're observing the moment-to-moment experiences without really interpreting or thinking about any future consequences. So think about this in a sporting context, right? I'm just observing what is happening. I'm not thinking about how this is going to affect whether I win or lose, just making observations. We're simply noticing what it is happening, and we're aware that we're noticing what is happening and how we're experiencing it. Okay, so there's the attention, then there's the attitude. So this is the way that we pay attention. So we can either hate what's going on, or we can welcome it. Okay, so that attitude is a big part of it, and that's tied into the interpretation piece of it. Okay, is it like I hate that I feel a little nervous right now, or it's just like, hey man, all right, I'm experiencing this. This is interesting. This is something, right? And then we have intention. So this is why we're deciding to engage in mindfulness itself. Okay, is a big part of it. And when we're attending intentionally with that sort of non-judgmental attitude, it helps us re-perceive the situation. So that's the idea. Okay, we're being mindful. We're opening ourselves up to looking at the situation differently than we would through our normal sort of natural pre-programmed lens. Is we're just opening ourselves up to re-perceiving that. So that's what leads, the re-perceiving is what leads to the positive outcomes of mindfulness. It's a change in perspective. Okay, so it's a lot of specific applications in sport, and being non-judgmental, even being compassionate, open and curious about the present, how we're experiencing it. We can use it to recognize when our attention is drifted away, right? And then without suppressing distractions, we can gently return to the original focus or present moment. Okay, so we're not trying to push down those things that are competing for attention. We're simply just noticing them and then saying, okay, this is where I need to be. I want to be back here in the present. So a really big shift in philosophy in relation to concentration and attentional focus and finding the zone and some of those other things I've talked about previously, which makes this so fascinating. Now, the efficacy of mindfulness, I mean, it works, right? It's been shown to reduce anxiety and depression. This is what you think about that. It's non-judgmental. We're not attaching all of these things, these strong emotions to what it is. We're just observing what it is, what's happening, so we can have an increased positive affect, right? In sort of the emotional presentation that we have. It can lead to increased self-awareness, autonomy, and coping skills. So that awareness, that's always step one in sports psychology, right? How do we build that self-awareness? Sometimes just being mindful, just paying attention to what's going on, get the outcome out of our mind and just experience what it is, what's happening. Okay, so with that, we can have decreased anger, worry, or even the absent-mindedness. We're not spacing out. We're not gone anywhere because we're here. We're in the here and now. Of course, it can improve attention, increase working memory. It can even improve immune function, which is cool, decrease disordered eating symptoms. So there's a lot of different benefits, health benefits, right? Endocrinological, neurological, enhances our brain function, may help us better deal with the anxiety and those negative emotions, can reduce burnout, anxiety, and of course, most importantly, can help those athletes get in the zone more frequently by improving concentration and thereby improving performance. So a lot of efficacy behind this philosophy, even though it's a little bit different than some of the other things we've talked about to this point. So now some specific interventions, okay? So I'm going to share some that are from the literature that you're just going to get a snapshot of these, not enough time to go into every one of them in detail, but there's several of them. So the first is from Gardner and Moore. It's a mindfulness acceptance commitment, okay, is the idea. And the key here is we're focusing on accepting our thoughts, emotions, and sensations, okay? Instead of trying to reject them and I don't like this feeling and attaching all of these interpretations to them, we're just accepting them as they are. And we're trying to increase mindful awareness and that non-judgmental acceptance in sport. Okay, so by doing this, we promote that positive, focused attention and the commitment to the behaviors and our personal values, what it is we want. So within this intervention program, there's seven different modules that you can walk through, right? So you prepare the client with some psychoeducation. If you're a sports psych consultant, this is how you're walking through these steps. We're going to introduce mindfulness and this cognitive diffusion idea, right? Separating yourself from what it is that's going on. You introduce the values and values-driven behavior, introduce acceptance, enhance commitment, right? And then we work on skill consolidation, which is the mindfulness, acceptance, and commitment, okay? Those three things. And then we maintain and we enhance it. So there's 7 different modules that can be worked through to use this program formally to develop mindfulness. There's also the mindfulness meditation training in sport 2.0 from Baltzell and Summers. And this is focused, of course, on enhancing attention, poise, and adaptation. And this also is a kind of a lengthy sort of format in all of these different modules. So there's 6 hour-long sessions. You do 1 per week, so it lasts six weeks. And there's it's a group format, right? Okay, so each session includes a little bit of instruction, some practice, and some discussion. And then there's these daily 10-minute practices encouraged throughout the whole session. Okay, so these formalized programs, it's pretty cool. It's something that if you had somebody who was trained in this that you had access to, you could go and you could develop this specifically, you know, outside in addition to the sport. And so the 6 modules, right? So it emphasizes self-compassion overall, but 6 modules, you got mindfulness, acceptance, concentration, compassion, identifying core values, and self-regulation, and then intentional engagement. Okay, different things we can work through on that. So then we also have the mindful sport performance enhancement from Kaufman and colleagues. This is adapted from Kabat-Zinn's work from 1990. This is also delivered in a group format, but it's adaptable for individual athletes. Okay, so keep that in mind. Mindful sport performance enhancement, you can adapt that to individual athletes. Also 6 weeks long with weekly 1.5 hour sessions. You got a didactic and experiential component, right? And participants are supposed to meditate 10 to 40 minutes per day and complete these mindfulness logs. Okay, so you have simulations, you have seated and walking meditations, mindful body scans, yoga-like movements and postures. These are all the types of things that are included in these types of programs. So the last one I'll mention is a Mindful Performance Enhancement Awareness and Knowledge program by Hasi and colleagues. And so you can shorten that one as the MPEAK, right? So there's 4 core pillars to this one. So we're inhabiting our body. That's that mindful awareness or that interoception. Okay, we're inhabiting it. Okay, we're actually going to be there. We're going to own that, and we're getting out of our own way, learning how to let go. Okay, so that sort of intentional or international response, right? Letting go of what it is, control. It's just experiencing it. And so if another way to describe this, you're working with an athlete who maybe is going through an injury, they're dancing with pain, right? They're working with difficulty, they're accepting those things, and then they're going to try and change. Okay, and also address our pitfalls of perfectionism, right? And the glitching goals. Those are all terms from that particular intervention. So there are some cool tools out there. The main reason that I bring these up, it's not enough time, like I said, to go through each of them and rehash them, but there's some specific formal programs out there that are available to develop your mindfulness that, of course, could then lead to enhanced performance and some nice positive life outcomes. So pro tips from me, right, is we need to differentiate when we're talking about this awareness thing, because that's like this key fundamental part of this. We need to differentiate between mindful awareness and general awareness. Okay, general awareness, we're kind of walking through a parking lot and kind of seeing what's going on, right? And we're seeing that's outside of us. Whereas mindful awareness is we're experiencing that, okay, more intentionally, more purposefully, okay, is a big part there. So we also have this cognitive diffusion thing. So I mentioned this earlier, but I want to say it again. It's separating from our own thoughts. Okay, so we observe and we can be aware of our thoughts, but we're separating ourselves from them. It's almost like you don't have to own them. And this is like a good tip for life in general anyways. Like, just because you have a thought doesn't mean that you need to own it. Like, who put that thought in your head? Where did that get there? How did that even get there? Like, what is that? And so when we diffuse from those, we can step back and be more objective about the thoughts that we have. Okay, and say, whoa, I mean, that's interesting. Like, why am I thinking that? And back to the is that hurting you or helping you idea. Okay, and breathing is a big part of this. Okay, so being mindfulness, this is something we practice. This is the most fundamental skill that you want to develop when you're doing mindfulness training. Okay, so mindfulness breathing. You can do a 1 minute, you can do 5 to 10 minutes of mindful breathing. Okay, so you're just going to focus on breathing for 1 minute. Some of us, it might be 30 seconds, it might be 10 seconds. Can I just focus on my breathing? How long does it take for your mind to wander away from what it is you're doing? That's the goal here. Okay, you want to build up and see if you can engage in mindful breathing for 10 minutes where your mind doesn't wander. You can keep that focus. Okay, and it takes practice. So you can sit comfortably, you can lay down when you do it. You want to be comfortable, close your eyes. You begin bringing awareness to the breath as you walk through this exercise. Okay, so you want to go through this formally. That's the key. Not just where you are, sit there, focus on your breathing. I mean, that's better than nothing, but you want to be intentional. Go to a place where you're not going to be distracted. Okay, so you close your eyes, bring your awareness to the breath. Notice how your chest and your stomach rise and fall with each passing breath. So you're paying attention to these things that happen anyways, but now you're being more mindful of them. Notice where your breath is felt, right? You feel expanding, you feel that relaxing. And if you no longer notice your current breath, right, you start to phase out, then gently return your awareness to it, okay? And so before finishing, you try and take this moment to notice any changes in your state, Okay, so the breathing, that's just like foundational. Start there with your mindfulness training. Okay, so additional simulations, you can do a mindful body scan. Where am I noticing areas of tightness, areas of pain, warmth, right? Different things. You can do mindful stretching with proficiency, right? So add mindful focus to your warm-up routines, mindful meditation, the 3-second rule, right? Mind, body, heart rate, plus your breath. Okay, 3 seconds to get connected to each of those different things. All right, I'm gonna take 3 seconds. Okay, where's my mind at? Where's my body? Where's my heart rate and my breathing? Okay, so a lot of these things are going to be more effective after athletes have developed just a baseline level of proficiency with mindfulness. Okay, and awareness is a big part of that. So lastly, most importantly, per usual, I say this to my kids all the time: how do you get better at anything, right? And they dutifully respond with practice, and that also applies to mindfulness. So there's got to be consistent practice, 5 to 10 minutes of daily practice. It doesn't take a lot of time, but really you can do it anywhere, anytime, in whatever it is that you're doing. Try to be more mindful in that. And if you end up working with athletes, remind them that a distraction doesn't represent failure with the mindfulness perspective or philosophy, right? It's just like, okay, you noticed that, and so you got distracted. So then we learn how to come back in, because we're going to get distracted. So that's part of this philosophy that's important to acknowledge and accept. So that's it for today. We covered a lot with mindfulness, a lot of the benefits, and then many different techniques out there. There's the formal intervention programs as well as the pro tips that I shared. So start with the breathing, like I said, give that a shot. Try and incorporate this into everything that you're doing anyways in your life. And just like everything else that I presented here, watch how it helps your performance. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this recording in the Sports Psych Lecture Series. I hope you learned something. More importantly, I hope you learned something that you can apply in your life. Feel free to share this presentation with others who might be interested. And if you're interested in more content like this, visit the Fehr Advantage channel on YouTube, or find the Fehr Advantage podcast on Spotify, or visit my website at fehradvantage.com.